So now, ladies and gentlemen, live and in colour, it's Mr. Wayne Lovejuice.
The other day I produced a Louis, had a chat with an interesting chappie who said that the YouTube algorithms really aren't that happy. If a channel only broadcasts once a week, so we decided we could text ya whenever we've got a piece of news in our new book on the track extra. Hello ladies and gentlemen, well we've got a special treat for us all today because, drum roll Jonathan, there is a new issue of Flying Snake out, and just like I did with the last issue I'm going to go through it with you all. But it's even better because, as well as the new issue of Flying Snake, we've also got Flying Snake's editor, who at the moment is being squashed by my dog. Hello, Richard.
Hello.
Yes, it's our old friend Richard Muirhead, and he is at the moment being clambered on by the dog. And I am going to go through the latest episode, I shouldn't call it an episode, the latest issue of Flying Snake. So, what have we got here? I've taken my glasses off because, despite the fact they're my reading glasses, I can't see anything with them on close up. It starts off with Richard's ever eccentric Dr. Devo's diary. And if you don't know, I think I've said about this before, if you don't know, Richard has a fascination with a band called Devo, who wear these peculiar hats. He's even got one of these peculiar hats himself that I bought him. One year I spent over half of the Weird Weekend budget on buying Richard a silly hat, which is what I think is probably the best use of CFZ funds there has ever been. But I've got one question for you, Richard. What are spuds and spudettes?
Well, Devo call their fans spuds. They use this word spuds or spudette to describe a Devo fanatic.
And so you've used it to describe a Flying Snake fanatic.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Okay, starting off. Oh, this is something I actually know about. Let's see if I can get it up to the camera. I doubt if I can. I don't know if you can read that, but it's a interesting article originally from the Transactions of the Devonshire Association in 1882, and it's about the white bird of Oxenham Manor. Richard, what's so special about the white bird?
Well, the white bird has appeared over hundreds of years, starting in, I think, the 17th century, and it appears to flutter around the room of a member of that family who's about to die. And this was recorded over a very long period of time. I don't know whether it still happens now, but my friend Bob Skinner passed on that document to me, and I'm featuring it in this issue of Flying Snake that John's reviewing, and probably the next two issues.
Well, I've always been fascinated by this case, and I've been to Oxenham Manor, and much to my great disappointment, although I wasn't really expecting it, there were no white birds fluttering about above it. But it's a very beautiful and slightly sinister looking old house, and I recommend anybody who's in the Oakhampton area than the north end of Dartmoor to go and check it out. Now I've got another one here. The next one's Lois Moderman, talking about holy stones. That's not stones that have any religious significance, it's stones with holes in, which are also known as fairy stones and hag stones, because allegedly, if you have one in your pocket, it'll keep malign witches away from you. And it will also keep you from being pixie-led or fairy-mazed, as they call it here in North Devon, which is a situation very similar to alien abductions, in which the victim of such an occurrence allegedly gets taken into a new and totally different world, from which they find it very difficult to escape. Whether this is something with an objective reality, or whether it is a psychological or possibly a parapsychological phenomenon, I don't know, and I don't think anybody does. But it's very interesting that all across Britain and parts of Northern Europe, the belief that having a stone with a hole in it in your pocket keeps you safe is very widespread. My grandmother always used to keep her stone with a hole on it in her pocket, and it always had her keys on it. And to this day, even though Gran died in 1975, I've still got her hagstone, and it's got the keys to the conservatory and the keys to several other outside bits tied to it. Now we have something interesting. We have Carl Schuker talking about a snake called a piku kuati, which is a tiny but terrifying crypto snake resembling Kipling's karate, alive and well and living in America. Now, there's one of the interesting things about this is that Carl is talking about a snake which is found as one of the characters in Kipling's story Rikki Tikki Tavi, which is from the first Jungle Book. And I'd always supposed that karate just was was the Anglo-Indian pronunciation of krite, and the krites are a largish group of poisonous snakes which are found in various parts of Asia. But Carl seems to believe that karate is actually something totally different. And he goes into a very, very interesting discussion about various front-fanged venomous snakes, and also the rear-fanged venomous colobrids. And he looks at the possibility of them being a brand new creature, a brand new species of snake, and it's very interesting. Well done, Carl. Now here I have a confession to make. As I said, I always assumed that karite was a Anglo-Indian pronunciation of krite. And it might well be that the name Karite, K-R-A-I-T, inspired Kipling when he named his little snake. But now I've had a look at pictures of all the species of krite known to live in India. None of them are small and brown. So either Kipling made it up, or Kipling was describing a snake that was known from India when he was a boy and when he was living there. And what makes me slightly embarrassed is that I've been reading the Jungle Book man and boy, as it were, since the mid-1960s. And I had never noticed this. So I'm really glad that Richard and Carl, between them, have brought this to my attention, because otherwise I would still remain in blissful ignorance. And then we have a very peculiar story about an entombed crab. And this comes from Bob Skinner, and it's about a crab, and I even have a picture of the crab here. A crab which is found entombed in rocks in Nottinghamshire. I know that Bob Skinner's been interested in entombed animals for ages. Didn't he write something for 14
Toad in the Hole. It was a 14 Times occasional paper that came out in the 1980s, I think. So, yeah, Bob stumbled across that story of a entombed crab and found some old newspaper commentary on it.
Well, I think that's fascinating. I've heard of entombed frogs and toads. I've even heard of, isn't there a story of an entombed pterodactyl?
Yes, I think that was a hoax. Apparently it was a hoax, I don't know.
I'm bloody
Sure.
certain it was a hoax. But
Yeah.
I've never heard of an entombed invertebrate before, so...
And so far inland as
Yeah.
well.
Have you heard of an entombed invertebrate, animals without a backbone?
No.
No, neither have I. So that is particularly interesting. And it's really impressive the way that you and Bob have found so many different reports of it.
Yes.
Okay,
It was widely reported.
now we have an article by Richard Muirhead and Shane Lee. I like Shane Lee.
Yeah.
I've never met him, but I've known him. We've been swapping emails on and off for about 20 years.
Yeah.
Really nice guy. Okay, Richard. This next subject is something that I'm very sceptical about.
Yeah.
But tell us, what is... Tell us about
There are
freshwater
reports-
octopuses.
There are reports all over North America of large octopi, plural, turning up in lakes, but nothing has ever been definitely, conclusively pinned down. And most scientists say it's impossible because octopuses are salt water animals and they can't survive in fresh water. Another thing is that small, like very small baby octopuses are used as bait. So the reports might allude to these creatures being found which were really just fishermen's bait. And so on the whole I'm sceptical, but there are reports from outside North America. CFZ's Carl Marshall found a story from Belize, although the one in Belize was not a strict, it wasn't from a lake, I think it was from like an inlet or a bay.
It was from a lake, but the lake was connected to the sea.
Yeah.
So it's, although it is technically a freshwater octopus, that one sounds more likely because there is connection to the sea, which means there's going to be some amount of salt in the water,
Yeah.
and the octopus didn't have to be in the lake all the time.
There's also a story from a Scottish loch or river from an old newspaper, but that probably refers to a case where there's a connection to the sea. There are also several reports from Africa of an animal, I think called the mega or the migo or something beginning with M, of, again from rivers, of a very dangerous cryptid supposedly attacking humans. That's from Bernard Heuvelmans' book Les Derniers Dragons d'Afrique.
Which I'd be very glad when they translate that into English, because
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to reading that.
A lot of his books have yet to be translated into English.
The next article is about floaters, the little bits of cell debris which in many people, I've got them, I don't know if you have
I
them,
have had them in the past, yeah.
are inside, are floating on the surface of your eye, which is very interesting. And he's talking about 14 aspects of these, which he was spurred into action by the fact that floaters made him have a hallucination of seeing some weird spider-like creature. So this is very interesting. I like Richard George's writing. I was very impressed with the thing he wrote a couple of years ago for us about those black woodpeckers. I thought that was really, really interesting. Now we come to the early summer of 2022 and the walruses, which have been reported from the Baltic early in the summer of 2022. And we all know the tragic story of what happened to one of the walruses, who was named Freya after the Norse god of love, and who was destroyed by the Norwegian government under controversial and very dodgy circumstances. And sadly, Freya is one of the walruses here, and it's interesting, however, that Ulrich Megan, who's another guy I've got a lot of respect for, posits that there might have been more than one walrus there. I think that, as I have said recently on several occasions, that it is very likely that the walrus visitors to Northern Europe from the Arctic are going to get more and more regular, because as global warming causes the ice caps to melt, a big influx of fresh water into the Arctic seas is going to kill a lot of the invertebrates, particularly the bivalves that the walrus feeds on. So walruses, and both the two that have visited Britain in recent years have been, both been sub-adult or a very young adult. They are the ones who are going to be moving south in order to try to find new places from where they can get the mollusks that they eat. So this is something that's going to happen more and more regularly. It's something that I am very pleased that Richard's magazine is documenting, but it's something that I think the governments of Northern Europe are going to have to work out what they're going to do about this, because it is unacceptable for governments to do what the Norwegian government did and shoot the poor bloody thing. I have, as regular readers will know, I have written a letter of complaint to His Majesty King Harald V of Norway. I haven't received an answer back yet, and it will be interesting to see if we do, because, believe me, I am going to start pestering the crowned heads of Europe any time any of them do something which I think is a piece of an unprovoked animal-side. I don't know if it's a word, beasticide, animal-side, an unprovoked attack or killing of an animal that really did not deserve it. And now we have a subject that I can hardly read out without bursting out laughing, because this title encapsulates in only a few words the high strangeness and complete eccentricity of Richard's magazine. Meat showers and insect falls in the Carolinas. And it opens up with a fish fall that happened in the middle of a thunderstorm in Kershaw County, South Carolina in 19 falls of meat. I've never heard of those before. I've heard of...
I think Charles Fort, in one of his books, covered something similar.
And in this one, bizarrely, somebody actually tasted something. Meat fell which looked and smelt like beef, and one witness actually examined the meat closely and even tasted a bit of it and said that it was beef.
It could have been a tornado that passed over a ranch or some animal farm and tore apart the animal, poor thing. And
well, that's roughly what they're saying here, but
yes,
I think that's... I can believe a tornado will take up fish and frogs.
Yeah.
And locusts and all the other things that fall.
Yeah.
But a whole cow, and what happened to the skin, the horns, the bones, and everything else.
Good point. Yeah.
But it's a riveting read, absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, she does a good job, Kate.
This is Kate Shaw of the Strange Animals
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah. She's written over several issues of Flying Snake.
And now we come to what's probably my favourite part of the magazine, because towards the end you have a whole selection of completely disparate animal records, and they include stuff like a kangaroo in Essex in 1909, an out-of-place alligator in Texas. This was in West Texas, and although there are alligators in the very far east side of Texas on the border with Louisiana, there aren't any supposed to be found anywhere else in the state. Indeed, this was where I had my first and to date only encounter with a wild alligator. I was visiting my mate Nick Redfern at the house he shared with his then wife in Nederland, which is near Houston, and he and I were driving around, just sightseeing really, and we crossed over the border into Louisiana, which was in the middle of some swamps, the swamps on both sides of the border, and within a mile we saw a small, but definitely an alligator, a small alligator, but definitely a real alligator, slipping off a mud bank into the water. Now, I've seen wild Nile crocodiles in the Tsavo Game Reserve in Kenya, but this so far was the only other encounter I've ever had with a wild crocodilian, and it was fantastic. One of the nicest memories I've got from the first few years of this century. Now here's a really weird one. In Cambridgeshire there was an archaeological dig of an Iron Age site in June this year, and they found, I wonder if you can guess what they found. They found thousands of frog bones in a ditch. No one knows why. And then you've got a story about a cyclist attacking... No, not a cyclist attacking. A cyclist being attacked by an angry zebra in California. And then you have the curious case of the native blue-grey mouse. Extinct or just missing? Many people like to say that Australia's mammals are all monotremes or marsupials, but there are in fact quite a lot of rodents as well. And this one, which was found, it was even in London Zoo in, I don't know when it was, 1910. And nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows if it's still alive, if it still exists, either in the wild or in captivity, or whether it is extinct. Extinct or just missing, as the headline goes. And now we have something which, well, sort of involves me. Because up until fairly recently, there was only thought to be one species of giant salamander in China. And indeed, some people tried to lump the Chinese and the Japanese giant salamanders together as one species, the Asian giant salamander. Well, for years and years and years, well over 30 years, I have been positing that a salamander which was found and taken to London Zoo and written about by E.G. Boulanger, who's one of my great zoological heroes, was a separate species that he called the Sligo salamander. However, no one had heard of them since, and Sligo salamander had been consigned to the dustbin of history and said that it was a slightly aberrant version, individual of the Chinese giant salamander. Well, a few years ago I had a very nice email from Darren Naish and Sam Turvey, who told me that I was right all along, and the Sligo salamander was indeed a separate species. One of 4 new species of the Chinese giant salamander. So there. And now it looks like there's another Chinese salamander, and it's been called Andreas gigantiensis, species nova. And I wonder how many more species, cryptic species, will be found both in China and in Japan. Watch the space, guys, because this is something I'm very, very, very interested in. Now we have an alligator found in Hyde Park in 1929, and the story of the mystery animal in Malaysia, which I'm sure you'll recognise this really cruddy picture, but it's something that Richard Muirhead found in a newspaper during, I think it was the Straits Times, during one of his visits to the British Library in London. And so he and I wrote about it both in the CFZ blog, and it came out and on the track, and now it's here again, just where it deserves to be, in the final section of Flying Snake, followed by a bird embryo found inside an apricot. Back in 1939 it was, but I would love to know what the truth behind this is, because look, there's even a picture, and it's a picture which I think is going to show up quite nicely. You can see indeed this is a bird embryo found inside an apricot. But what the blinking flip the cause of that is, I have absolutely no idea. Now we have a falling octopus, which was we had in the CFZ newsletter a couple of months ago. Then, this is getting very strange, a zombie fish has been found in Colorado, sort of. Yellowfin cutthroat trout was a fish that once grew up to 12 pounds and fed another fish, but more than 120 years ago it vanished. Other fish that were thought to be extinct have recently appeared in Colorado waters, including, according to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the greenback cutthroat trout was found again, and the San Juan River cutthroat trout returned as well. So why couldn't the legendary yellowfin cutthroat, a giant amongst cutthroat last seen in Colorado waters in Twin Lakes near Leadville at the turn of the 20th century, still be hiding somewhere on the Colorado landscape? I think again we have to watch this space. Now we have Oxfordshire Wildlife Rescue rescuing a white badger in June this year. A hoopoe. I've always thought it was pronounced hoopoe, haven't you, Richard?
Hoopoe, yes, I think.
Yeah, I've always thought it was hoopoe, but Richard Freeman told me it's hoopoo, or hoopoo.
Oh.
Hoopoo? Hoopoo or hoopoo? I don't know. But I've always thought it was hoopoe. And this one has turned up in St Nicholas's, Hinksworth in Hertfordshire. And we have a near-death monster, or a koipu, about a guy in the 1950s recounting his suicidal feelings whilst a patient in a psychiatric hospital. He decides to lie down on the railway track, and in the last minute before he was about to be run over by a passing train, I was confronted in the dusky light about a yard from my face by the most hideous features I had ever encountered. It was the face of a monster, a ghastly mask, a ghastly mask hanging disembodied in the mist, its lips curled back and its mouth opened in a soundless snarl. Could it have been one of the first koipu to have invaded Norfolk? Well, it wouldn't be one of the first because they were there as early as the 1930s. Or could it be some weird premonition that stopped the guy killing himself? Now we have a baby beaver in Cheshire, probably the first for over 400 years. Although it wasn't picked up by the mainstream news, who just wanted to cover a cute picture of a baby beaver, the beaver is the first offspring of a pair of beavers which were introduced in 2020 to a Cheshire Wildlife Park. And there has been a second baby beaver a few months later in September. And finally, there is a letter from Ulrich Megan, who's discovered more German reports of flying snakes. Well, I think this is fantastic. And
letters to fate as well.
Yes, there's letters to fate. There is all sorts of other interesting stuff here. And do young adders flee into their mother's jaws in case of danger? Well, I would have thought not, but if I do know that people have reported this for many years, so maybe it's true.
Yeah.
And there's more little bits and odds. There's Garrymangia copper, and there's Day of the Oarfish, showers of frogs, a 10-foot man leading sheriff's deputies in merry chase, twinkling objects, white mist. You really have to read it. So, we come to my main reason for doing this. I want lots of you to go out and subscribe to Richard's magazine because it is really good. So, Richard, tell me, how do you do it?
There are two ways you can subscribe. If you send me an email, richieblonde777@gmail.com. That's blonde with an E. You can ask me how many issues you want. It's £3.99 per issue. Or just tell me if you want any back issues and I'll give you the price. Or you can find me on Facebook, Richard Muirhead, and send me a message and I'll fill you in on how to subscribe.
And of course there is the book of the first volume of Flying Snake, which we published a couple of years ago, and which is available from Amazon and from the CFZ shop, which is also Amazon. Now, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to say a big thank you to my guest, Richard Muirhead. And I also want to apologise to you guys who are used to the Wednesday evening show only being 10 or 15 minutes long, whereas this one is pretty long even for an ordinary show. But as you could see in this remarkable magazine, there's just so much in it, and it would have been a crying shame to cancel or to cut out any of it. So I don't really apologise. Now I'm going to be back on Saturday. What's on Saturday's show? Truthfully, I have no idea. I can't remember. But I know there is a show on Saturday. And I'll be back next Wednesday. And what's in that show? I don't know, because we haven't recorded it yet. And I hope everything works out fine and jolly for everyone. And next time I'm back, with or without Archie, Lilith and the crew, including Hennis and all the other animals and mythic creatures with whom I share my existence, I'll be seeing you.